Hi, people. Please excuse the lighting. I've just been resting for a bit, so I'm in bed here. Sunday's kind of a lazy day, so just chilling. I've got my side light on. My big light actually fused a while back, and I don't want to mess around with the sockets. Yeah. Um, the video I'm making here kind of encompasses things I've spoken about before, but it seems like a good time to make it because there's a lot of debate around, the barriers of what's acceptable, really. I'm talking about the Will Smith, Chris Rock incident. Now, the conventional view, and one I agree with, is that Will Smith was out of line in terms of assaulting Chris Rock. Some have defended it. Anthony Joshua, incidentally, defended it and said he should have used a closed fist. Now that's irresponsible for a heavyweight boxer to come out with something like that. Um, like I said in the previous video, I don't think Smith should have done that. I think assault is assault, and you have to have self-control. You have to be able to not lash out every time you're offended by something. Um, but I want to in this video address the other side of it. Now, I'm not making any moral equivalency. Violence isn't on the same par as being offensive. It's not. Um, After the Charlie Hebdo attacks in Paris, there were Islamists around the world condoning it, trying to make an analogy saying they'd hurt the feelings of Muslims that somehow justified or downplayed the murder of 12 people. Um, in the case of Charlie Hebdo, like everyone, I was disgusted by that. But a few years afterwards, they made a cartoon, which was basically making fun of the Russian civilian airliner that was shot down over Sinai. And in that cartoon, they had basically the pilot's decapitated arms groping an air flight attendant. Now, that to me was disgusting. It was just an example of the sort of crass um, brain dead sort of humor that you get out there. Charlie Hebdo got a lot of international support because it was rightly seen as an attack on free expression. But one big part about free expression is the right for others to criticize. So I would even support the right of Muslims to say they found Charlie Hebdo in bad taste or offensive, all the rest of it, just not to cross into the realm of threats or violence or even censorship. That brings me to comedians now. Chris Rock's joke was by no means the most tasteless I've ever heard. I think it was a bit, I think it was cruel. Um, but he sort of caveated by saying, I love you, Jada, as if to sort of soften the blow. He knew what he was doing. And the thing is, the whole discussion now is about poor Chris Rock, the victim, and what an awful guy Will Smith is. And, maybe he is arrogant. Maybe Smith does deserve a good bit of criticism. There is incidentally a report, it was investigated by Snopes, saying that apparently Smith had made fun of a man who was bald on some show years ago. That's partly true in the sense that he did, but the difference was that man didn't have alopecia. Um, the thing is, people condemning Will Smith, and I condemn what he done, but they're taking away the human side of it. They're taking away the human side of it. If you have a loved one, it could be your wife, your husband, your child, your parent, and they're close to you, and they're going through or have been through some really trying thing in their life. It could be a medical condition, it could be something else. And you have someone who uses that struggle or that suffering basically for cheap laughs. I defy anyone to be okay with that. And I do think there's a lot of hypocrisy in people condemning Will Smith without thinking honestly how would they react. Again, I have to keep underlying this point. I'm not condoning his actions. I'm not saying it's an equivalency. Okay, violence isn't on par with an offensive joke. But I don't think Rock deserves too much sympathy because he chose to make that cruel jab and he knew what he was doing. And I think that's part of the reason he didn't press charges, because I think after the slap, he was shocked. I think he maybe felt some guilt as well. Smith should also feel guilt. You can't just assault a man for being offensive. Also, the context is important. Chris Rock wasn't posing any physical threat. It was cruel, and it was probably hurtful to Jada Pinkett Smith, but it wasn't a physical threat as you might get, for example, in a street situation. Like, say, for example, you have a couple who are going down the street and some drunks start hurling verbal abuse, then the man would be in a defensive posture because that's a potentially threatening situation, especially in this country. I've been in situations where I've been minding my own business and some louts, to use a British colloquialism, have just shouted things at me. I hate people like that. I have just total contempt for them. Um, we rightly judge violence, but we should also judge bullying. And what I'm tying in here, because I don't think it's irrelevant, is that when we talk about humor, when we talk about these sort of this tendency for modern comedians, and the list is endless. I mean, in Britain, of course, we had Jimmy Carr earlier this year and his Holocaust joke. Um, and the list goes on and on and on. It seemed to be the go-to for pretty much every comedian, stand-up comedian at least, is to rely on cruelty. Now, I understand the argument. Humor is very subjective. I get that. It's like what sort of music you like or what sort of film genres. It is subjective. And I wouldn't tell anyone you are not allowed to find that funny. I would challenge them to dictate, to not dictate for others to find something funny. For that reason, I hate the expression, oh, it's just a joke. That's a lazy and stupid expression because it's mandating that others should find something funny. I mean, taking that argument to its extreme, you could have some comedian go to someone's funeral, and I know this is unlikely to happen, but I'm just putting out a scenario here. And let's say the person's been murdered, and they make some sick joke at the family's expense at the funeral, like they turn up uninvited, and I defy anyone to say that is not um, repugnant. I know it's unlikely to happen, but I think that comedians do rely on cruelty, and I think as such it kind of normalizes a bullying mindset. And then simultaneously, we ask, well, what can we do to stop bullying? Well, maybe stop glorifying comedians who basically normalize that sort of behavior. This idea that you can use someone's struggle as a way to score cheap laughs. I mean, I do think it normalizes that sort of mindset. And I don't see myself, my own sense of humor. I don't see myself as square. I mean, I think some edginess and humor is definitely adds a certain depth to it that you wouldn't necessarily have with straight laced humor. The sort of shows that I like, Friends, The Big Bang Theory. I was going to make a video about that actually. Some of the humor, it's not entirely tame, but I would say it's more tame than the sort of humor you would get in with stand-up comics. I think, occasionally in Friends or The Big Bang Theory, I'm just using those two shows as examples. I wouldn't say it's totally straight-based humor. I think some of it could be perhaps seen as edgy or even dark. So I'm not saying that there's absolutely no place for that. I also think that dark humor can be used in satire, and it always has been. If you have an incident of, say, a terrorist attack or some big disaster, dark humor, gallows humor can even be used as a way of a coping mechanism for survivors. Um, I've heard, the theory that soldiers in tense situations like a war zone will often tell tasteless jokes as a way of defusing the tension, and that's understandable. But I do think we need to challenge this idea that comedians cannot be criticised, because there is this tendency that when comedians get criticised, their defenders seem to think it's an attack on free speech, forgetting the fact that criticism is also part of free speech. So if someone wants to say they think that Jimmy Carr is X, Y, and Z, they should have the right to say it. Now they can't threaten him with violence or attack him. But I think that Jimmy Carr, that particular joke I think was low. Because children died in the Sinti Holocaust. I just don't like when comedians rely on people suffering as a way to get cheap laughs. I think it is lazy because they all do it. I don't think there's anything original about it. I also think that it's kind of manipulative because they can then hide behind, oh, it's just a joke. Um, I mean, it's subjective, so they can't dictate that others find something funny. And their supporters have to understand that. You know, so I'm going to round this up, but I think that, of course, violence is an extreme thing, and it should be. I'm not a pacifist. I think the only time violence should be used is in necessary cases of self-defense or defending another. And being offended isn't enough reason to be aggressively defensive. But I do think in that situation, how should Will Smith have handled it? Well, um, I think it would have been within his rights to heckle or say that's not cool, man, or something like that. Just and then I think actually the audience would have turned against Chris Rock, and I'd have no sympathy with him because it was a cheap shot. The problem is now Chris Rock is a victim because he was a victim of assault. Um, and comedians never take responsibility for their words. They always kind of have this cop out, oh, it's just a joke, without really acknowledging why people are angry and upset about it. As an example of this, Jimmy Carr tried to worm his way out of that joke by claiming that he was spreading awareness of it. Now, I'm sorry, it's just an excuse. It's just an excuse because he knows that it was provocative and controversial. He doesn't want to take responsibility for it. So he's now making excuses that it was somehow educational. Um, I suppose you could argue that with that joke, maybe more people were aware that Romani people were also victims of the Holocaust. So in that sense, it sort of spread knowledge. But I just know how I would feel if someone I cared about was a target of one of these stand-up comics attack lines, jokes, I would not be laughing. I would be downright pissed off. And I'd be tempted to lash out. I wouldn't do it because but this is being brutally honest. People are very sort of like, oh, it's violence, violence, terrible, it's disgusting. But I defy them to say they wouldn't be angry if a loved one was targeted. Will Smith's behavior shouldn't be normalized. Of course it shouldn't, but nor should cruel humor. This is the point I'm driving at. It shouldn't be normalized as an okay thing. It is subjective, and in a free society, I don't think you can censor humor, even if it is sick, tasteless, cheap humor. But we have to get over this idea that comedians are above criticism. Um, and I don't think that it should be normalized to make bullying nasty, unpleasant, cruel jokes a normal thing. I don't think that should be defended. Um, that's my opinion. This is not to say I think that all humor should be completely clean and not offensive to anyone. I get that if you are in the business of comedy it is difficult to come up with original content, and I guess you can make the argument that someone is always going to be offended by something, and you could say there's overly sensitive people. But I think there's a difference between making a joke that's meant to be intelligent and some people inadvertently take offense to it versus deliberately trying to be provocative for the sake of being provocative, knowing that something is hurtful. I think there is a difference. Um, I mean, in terms of offensiveness, scale of offensiveness, I could point to that teacher in West Yorkshire who was giving the lesson on blasphemy. Now, Some Muslim hardliners found that offensive, but the teacher was merely talking about the subject. He wasn't deliberately being blasphemous. And that's different from, for example, burning a Quran or showing a willfully offensive picture of the Prophet. I think it is different. Um, so I think the comedians, I'll conclude with this. I think that comedians who deliberately seek to be hurtful, they know what they're doing. And I think it's manipulative. I think it's low. And they hide behind their supporters. They usually have thousands of supporters. Another example of this, when Family Guy used the Terry Schiavo case, I might have quoted this before, in one of their sketches. It was actually quite an early one. And after watching that, I like some of Family Guy, but that sickened me because that was a real family. If you're not familiar with the case, it was a euthanasia case in the United States. They were ordinary people who got sort of caught up in this legal battle. Some of the family wanted one thing, and other members of the family wanted something else, and it became a major legal battle. But basically, Family Guy decided to turn this into a sketch, and I thought it was disgusting. And I think that Seth MacFarlane can be it could be basically a playground bully sometimes by using that sort of content. He knows what he's doing. Another thing I dislike about Family Guy is the ad hominems on celebrities' appearances. You can mock their personality, mock their ego. That's all fair play. But especially with female celebrities, it gets into these ad hominem attacks, and I think it's about someone's appearance. I think that is cheap. I think it's nasty, unpleasant, and I think Seth MacFarlane's a shit for doing it, to be quite honest. Um, and I know he's not the only person behind the scenes, but all I would say to people who defend this sort of humour is put yourself in the shoes of those who it's targeting and say with a straight face that it wouldn't bother you. If you can honestly say it wouldn't bother you, fine. But if you're being honest and you say, well, yeah, maybe it would bother me, then don't tell others that they can't be offended because it's a natural human response. So, in conclusion, regarding the infamous incident, I think Will Smith's anger was natural. I think Chris Rock's joke was low, but I think the assault went too far.